Hello, Reject Nation. It's Greg Alba here.
It's Andrew here.
We're going to do a spoiler talk of The Punisher, Marvel's Netflix series. If you haven't seen the show, or if you want to see our non-spoiler review, we just uploaded that video. Andrew is uploading a video on his channel this week, the Movie Source channel, which is going to be all Easter eggs and references that all take place throughout the 13th episode season of The Punisher. I'm sure he might sprinkle in a couple here or there
I'll try
in
my
this
best.
video, but if you want to get all of them, he showed me his iPad, has a huge breakdown of a lot of things, so keep a lookout for that video. In the meantime, we'll just do a spoiler talk right now. Whew, I'm telling you, it's a relief to do a spoiler talk because
Frank Castle is the Punisher.
Frank Castle's the Punisher. When you do a non-spoiler review and you have to really watch out, make sure you're not spoiling anything the whole time. It's harder for a TV show than it is a movie.
Yeah, for sure. Because there's so much more.
Yeah,
hours and hours.
You feel like you really got to elaborate, and you're like, I can't though, because it's spoilers. I guess I could take it character by character here. Why not start off with the man of the hour, Frank Castle?
Not
man.
Micro?
Not Micro. Micro was great. He was great. Frank Castles. I really loved how this show handled Frank in this series. Because when it starts off, it wraps up his story. He takes care of the rest of the people that were involved in the shooting, the direct shooting of his family getting hit by bullets and stuff. He wipes them all out in the beginning. It's cool, and then the show goes into the actual mode, because that's more like a prologue. When the show starts off, Frank Castle's got the beard, he's a construction worker, and you can see he's this guy who's still haunted by the memory of his family dying. And I like that approach. I like the approach of he gets his revenge, he's not healed though, because that is not the true path to recovery. And the big themes of this show deal a lot with grief. But a show that has some pretty sick gun action, it also emphasizes how haunting violence can actually be. So even though it's kind of weird, because there are times you're like, sick, cool, but this is real and disturbing at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
And I kind of liked how this show successfully pulled that tone off. There's this scene that they talk about in Daredevil season 2. The Major, when he's on trial for Frank, he's talking about how on a mission, Frank just wiped out a whole bunch of the enemy. He just like killed a bunch on his own and saved a bunch of soldiers' lives. And then in this show, you get to see that scene. You get to see that flashback
payoff.
scene. The only thing I wish about that scene is that they did it in one take. That would have been sweet.
Well, yeah, because they kind of did that in Daredevil season 2, where he's just going through all the prisoners in the prison scene. Like, I don't remember, it's been a while, but the way they shot that was so incredible.
Yeah.
This was still amazing, but when you compare it, it's not as good, but still good.
To me, that's a defining moment of this whole show in terms of how they handle the violence, because that has the entire thing I'm talking about right there. It's so cool to watch what he's doing. At the same time, this is a war scene, so it feels real, it feels brutal, and it feels haunting, especially when he takes that rock and he's just smashing that wall. You don't even see the face he's smashing.
Yeah,
but
you can imagine.
Shot on Frank.
I'm glad they didn't show it, because you can imagine what in your mind, and I think that's even scarier. And when he was just chomping down, I kept on thinking Mel Gibson in Patriot with the But no, I agree with you. I like how haunted they made this character in terms of after he's finally accomplished his goal. In his mind, thinking that he finally finished off, finishing the vendetta against who'd killed his family. I like how this show is really smart though in terms of his story. Like, there's a lot of different layers on uncovering his backstory in terms of what really went down. Obviously, we know the Major, and there was the drug deals and all that. But obviously, Frank, learning knowledge about that, and then we find out that actually his best friend freaking betrayed him. That was something I really appreciate in the show. One of the themes is betrayal. I thought they dealt with it in a very mature way. And when you actually like see the backstory, showing the non-linear storytelling of the flashbacks between Billy and Frank. Like, it actually makes it all the more painful when you see him actually. I mean, obviously, he physically wasn't there, but he knew about it and didn't tell Frank, which is the ultimate betrayal, because he's so close with their
The actors in the writing sold that betrayal moment. Even though it's like from the second he shows up, you're like...
We all knew, all of us said
I didn't even remember Billy Russo's Jigsaw. I didn't remember Jigsaw's real name is Billy Russo. But the second he shows up, you're like, oh yeah, he's obviously a bad guy. Look at how he's coming across.
Just look at his hair.
Look at his hair. Look at how he stares.
Back.
You're like, this guy's totally a bad guy. The scenes in the flashback when they're overseas, they really sold that friendship. I really bought it to the point where I would kind of doubt sometimes, like, maybe Billy Russo was actually a good guy. Another theme that they have here, it deals like with betrayal, is the themes of corruption too. How corrupt the US military can sometimes be on certain aspects. This isn't a glorified, one thing I was hoping the show wouldn't do, and they don't do it, make like a America, yeah, because that's not the show at all. And it's not exactly screw America either. It's that gray that this show deals with. Frank has no problem at all being a Marine. I love that moment when he's telling Micro, I love being a Marine. I love it. You know, I have 2 families. That's a great moment because I love his loyalty to not feeling like I shouldn't have been a Marine. That was a big part of his identity. But also, this whole thing deals around this tape that shows Madani's partner getting shot, and it's Frank who pulls the trigger. And when you see that scene and you see what Frank does and how he handles it, it gives you a deeper understanding into the psychology of Frank. That's what I love about this show. It's really like a character study of Frank Castle.
I think what I also loved about Frank, I mean, Jon Bernthal gives an amazing performance just in the action sequences and the dramatic sequences, the sequences where you believe he's being beaten to death.
Yeah.
How does that man survive with being beaten so much too? You're like, how does that body take so much abuse?
It's all mental.
Yeah, right?
It's all
Actually,
mental.
I do believe it with that character, but I think what I love so much about this character is how methodical he is, you know, and like with Lewis, for instance, like when he started figuring it out, this guy started messing with his mind a little bit and got him to tell him how to cut the wire. Like he's very intelligent, and that's one thing that gets me feeling that relatable sense to characters and gets me invested. It gets me much more invested in these characters. Is, you know, when characters humor on the humor side, that's one way to get me, and also intelligence. And he is a very intelligent character in the way, like I said, he methodically gets around situations or through characters. The way he was working with Karen, like the teamwork, getting with the wire with Lewis, like that was a really interesting moment scene. And I believe also too that Lewis in this final moments in that freezer was reading a poem from Rudyard Kipling's The Young British Soldier. So fun little fact there. So that was pretty cool. By the way, that character Lewis, his name is Lewis Wilson on the show. That could be a reference to Lewis Wilson, the first actor ever to play Batman in 1943 in those volumes 1 and 2.
I told him that.
Thanks for telling me, Greg.
Of course.
Stole that
Of course. Of course. When you're talking about humor, a lot of that comes out between him and Micro.
Yeah. I love that friendship.
It was interesting to me watching that develop because there's a 3rd or 4th episode where I felt it dragged too long. Looking back on it, it doesn't feel that way now. There's that one episode, in the moment it felt like that when I'm being introduced to it, when I'm like, okay, I'm familiar with Micro. I know you guys are going to team up. It's pretty obvious you guys are going to team up. So can we just get to you guys teaming up instead of like Micro's being naked in a chair and all this stuff? But they're setting up all the passcodes and everything. Of the security cameras recording at them, things that are going to come in at the end, the retinal scans and how to input the password. All these things that they're setting up for things that will eventually pay off later do come full circle, and it does make sense in the long run of why it took so long for Frank to trust him. After everything that's been going on, he knows that this tape that Micro has is a big reason for why his family was killed, yada yada yada. He doesn't know if he can trust the guy. Frank already has trust issues. He doesn't work well with other people. But the way they build that relationship, like there's little touches in there of humor that I really appreciated. When they're driving to that one mission and Frank's eating a salad and then Micro has a sandwich. Yeah. And Frank's like all pissed off because he has a sandwich. And the way their friendship builds. One of the more fascinating aspects of this, that when they initially got introduced, I was like, I don't really know how I'm going to feel about seeing this in the show, but it became one of the more compelling elements to me. Micro has his family that he keeps his eye on the whole time, and Frank sort of intervenes and gets involved in the family's life. And it's this weird contrast that is so compelling because Micro longs to see his family and longs to be with his family. Frank doesn't have his family anymore, so he's kind of playing vicarious father and vicarious husband figure to Micro's family. And man, when Micro's wife kisses him, I was like, oh shit! I mean, we all saw it coming, but shit!
Well, no, not only that too, and really quick, fun little fact to go off of that, when they were kissing, they were both also played Jon Bernthal and the actress who plays Sarah Lieberman. I believe it's Jamie Ray Newman, if I'm wrong, sorry. They were also estranged husband and wife on the TV show Eastwick. So fun fact there. What I appreciated about that relationship, you said it all, but just I'm gonna echo more towards Micro's family. They think the father is dead. They think David is gone. When Frank is kind of filling up that void, you know, they're getting that. I think that's why they work so well together, is because they're building up some emotions that they both feel towards each other. I mean, one obviously has lost his family. You know, Frank, in terms of he's lost his wife and his kids. Obviously, he's doing his friend a favor. I mean, he's not friends yet with him, but partner in arms, he's doing him a favor. But like you said, where where he's doing that and he's being vicariously like that father. I also think too, it's what's keeping him sane, because he doesn't have a wife or kids anymore, and like he wants that feel, even though he knows he's never gonna go out with this woman, he wants that feeling of like having that family touch again. And I appreciated that they got that too on David's Sarah's side as well, where her and her family think that David is gone and they want someone to fill that void, and that's what Frank is. And those moments were so touching, they were so emotional, and they were very bonding and really cute, I thought too.
That's the thing about the show that I really love, is that
especially the daughter in Frank.
Yeah, is that revenge doesn't heal these wounds. He's still recovering from the loss of his wife and children. One of my favorite episodes was the second to last episode. Frank is tied down to the chair in Micro's hideout, and William Rawlins is like beating the shit out of him. It did this storytelling maneuver. The more Frank is dying, the more he's imagining being closer to his wife. I like the dream aesthetic. They
going to limbo.
Yeah, going into limbo.
I was like, where's Professor Dumbledore? Where are one of the Transformers?
When he's imagining his wife, he feels like he's getting closer to her, and then by the end of it, he's sort of making the choice that he has to live. He still has to live, that he can't just sacrifice himself. It was cool that Micro showed up. Because of that, even though he gets his revenge by the end of this show, I love the ending of it. I feel like the ending scene might be a little bit like, what the hell? It's a weird place to end. But I think that's a great place for this show to end, like for a season 1 to end. It's not going season 2 setup, but it is sort of leaving room for a season 2 of how he decides he gets his life back. He's Pete Castiglione, and he's in the group therapy session, and he's saying, I don't have a war to fight, and now I'm scared, you know? And so he still has more recovery to do, but now he's getting the proper treatment. Of course, it's all gonna go wrong in season 2. I like the setup of Frank at least making the choice to go, I have to truly heal now because I'm choosing to live. This is a story about a guy who, it's very obvious, this guy wants to die throughout the entire show. He only lives to get revenge, and by the time he has his chance to complete his revenge, just at least bring Billy Russo down, he chooses to live, and now he has to choose to heal. And that's such a beautiful part of this journey. Something I wasn't expecting at all going into the show was watching a man who's grieving so heavily decide he has to live. And also with the family dynamics, it's a cool thing because Frank is obviously tempted. He would love to be daddy to these kids, and he would love to bang Micro's wife. Like, you could tell he's super into her. And you can't blame the guy. She's a very attractive woman. She's totally making the moves on him, even though he's been kind of manipulative in the way he kind of showed up and does all these things. You could tell she's into him. Also, it's such a good character study because you could see that she just misses her husband and she's lonely, and she'd just be using Frank. The way that all plays out, even when Micro reunites with his family, that sex scene they have.
That porno scene.
He finishes really quick.
Yeah, right?
But he would.
Hey, it's been a year. It's been a year, dude.
That he would finish super quick.
Well, he had computers for a year.
And I like how it was like tension filled with them at first, and it has to deal a lot with forgiveness. There's also some great plot twists and turns that kept going on in this show. The way they did Billy Russo, I think it was smart that they gave him a different background than his comic book origin. Because in the comic book origin, Billy Russo
is a mobster and a gangster.
He's just a bad guy.
Yeah. Also in Punisher Warzone with Dominic West in 2008.
Jigsaw.
Hey, I'm Billy. I'm Billy.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, and that's kind of how his comic book origins are. So I agree with you. I appreciated this different take, and it felt more personal now with the betrayal of him knowing that they were going to kill Frank's families. I thought it would have been even more interesting if they would have said that he actually went there and pulled the trigger himself. That would have been like damn territory. But obviously it makes him way less redeemable, but not that he was a redeemable character at all. In terms of it would have kind of mirrored Frank in terms of that what he had to do, where he has to live with haunting. Does Billy have to live with haunt in terms of what he did? Obviously they didn't go that route, but again, I just appreciated that side of the relationship where he's not from his comic book origins, and it felt even more personal rather than, oh, Punisher just going to kill the bad guy.
Well, the cool thing about the Billy Russo portrayal here is that he felt like a human being. He really felt like a human being, because even though this guy is all about serving himself at no matter what cost, sacrificing family, friends, whatever, it's all about serving himself. He was willing to kill the girl he was banging just so he can protect himself.
He's the pretty boy, dude.
He's the pretty boy.
We call him pretty boy now.
There's constant hints and moments of deeper emotion. There's that one scene with his mom. Oof. where he just keeps her drugged up, and he hates the crap out of her because he's so hurt by how he was raised and how he was abandoned. He's hurt. There's this great like Tarantino-like standoff in the last episode where Curtis gets shot by Billy Russo in his apartment, and Frank has a sniper on him, and there's like a lot of dialogue going on between the three of them. It plays like a Tarantino-like sequence. Even in that scene, Billy's hurt by the situation emotionally. You can tell Billy, like, yeah, he's mad and he wants to kill them.
He was lying to him, Curtis.
Yeah, but he has feelings too. You know, a lot of this deals with choice and outcome and how PTSD affects people. One situation, you get a Curtis and you get a Frank type of PTSD scenario, and then you get a Billy Russo type where it just kind of turns you onto this dark side. Then you get the Lewis character aspect, which I thought was very fascinating because Lewis, a lot of the show, when he's being set up, I kept going, this is great PTSD exploration of traumatized war soldier. At the same time, I was like, well, how the hell is this tying into anything right now? How is this linking to anything?
They paid it off in a good way.
They paid it off in a really well-structured episode. They build up to Lewis becoming this bomber, and he believes he's kind of like a Frank Castle, a Punisher type of hero for the city as well. That's another theme this show deals with, is the moral boundaries.
He also felt like an anarchy type. Everything is corrupt politically. You know, we're just the little guys, we're being stepped on, and I need to take a stand.
Yeah.
So there were some interesting messages going on in there too. So the character definitely had layers to him, for sure.
He's hurt by the world, and now he's taking it out on the world.
Right. The world has rejected him, especially as a soldier who served his country.
It's this interesting take on the show where he essentially becomes a villain. At the same time, you understand why he's become the way he is. Like, you really built that. You're like, this guy was just an innocent kid. Now, because of all the shit he's had to go through and the constant rejection he's had, now he's become this bomber, and I like the way that all tied in, because even when he becomes a bomber and there's all that shit going down at the hotel, I was also thinking to myself, is this still essential to the entire plot? I like, it's interesting, it's fascinating, I like the Frank's becoming a hero, but is this really essential to everything that's going on? But then, because of that scene, you get a lot of reveals. Punisher confronting Madani and Billy Russo confronting each other, all because of this bombing sequence. That all led to this. That was all very powerful stuff. Also, the bomber causes Frank to be revealed to the public that he's still alive, and that was such a great touch to make him the man on the hunt again, and he just embraces being the Punisher.
I also like how they showed that scene in different scenarios where they showed
time lapses.
Yeah,
not very Tarantino.
Not only different time lapses, but they showed it from a perspective of where you showed like a character, even if the character was lying, they showed you the lying version.
Yeah,
so you're like,
Frank helps out.
Did Frank actually help?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was confusing at first.
They were just lying, and that's what that the politician just saving his ass was just saying. So, but I appreciated that. Like, instead of just the character saying, "Oh yeah, Punisher helped him and he shot him," they actually showed it to like almost confuse us. So I actually appreciate that. And you said it was really well structured, and I thought that character was very interesting too, especially how they ended it. Because I was thinking like most of the way through, like, where is this exactly going? But it was done in an interesting, and it paid off for me. And
but when he served his purpose for the plot, for all the reveals to come out, he kills himself. So they didn't drag his story out either. Like they
built it up in a good way. Like, again, all the constant rejection, him being in a hole, and all that stuff. Like, you could feel like, dude, this fool's about to snap. And I think that's also something I really appreciate about this show, the dramatic tension and all the suspense it built, because like, these are just normal characters. These aren't super villains with superpowers. Whenever Billy Russo's got a knife, or whenever Lewis is on, like, I feel like these characters could snap at any moment, and that's really terrifying to me. So when you can terrify me without superpowers, I thought that was really powerful job on those actors' parts.
The Madani storyline was something that I just couldn't get on board with the first few episodes. I feel like they filled screen time with her because they needed to, because they have 13 episodes. I could have used less of her in the first half and then used more of her in the second half. Like, a lot of that could have been trimmed out for me. It was a slow build to something that I just wasn't really appreciating. Every time a character showed up to talk to her, they all gave her some psychological study about her, and then they go full out with her mom. More psychological. I'm like, why are you trying to get me so interested in why Madani is the way she is? I don't care. Just move it along, would you? Her story starts getting more interesting once she gets in the car chase with Frank. When she gets in that car chase with Frank and you see like, okay, this is a little bit more of a badass character right now. She knows Frank is alive but has to keep it a secret. I could have done with the first 3 episodes just like a scene or two of her, but I don't need like a lot of the episode dedicated dedicated to her. Her story wraps up nicely too. I like how her story deals with forgiveness, especially when she learns that Frank is the one who killed her partner. She's the one who pulled the trigger, and she has to
just follow an order.
But she has to also see past that. She has to eventually learn to see Frank is actually a good guy, and that he deserves a second chance in life after all the sacrifices he's made. That was a really nice touch to it. I thought she got killed at the end.
Yeah, me too. When she got popped in the head, I was like, how the, I mean, but everyone's, I mean, I mean, I thought Billy too. I know they were going to turn to Jigsaw at that point, but before that whole reveal, I was like, how can you survive these situations? But hey.
And when Billy turns into Jigsaw,
that was a good reveal.
IMDb freaking ruined that for me, man.
Glad I didn't look at that.
That was a sick way to turn him into Jigsaw.
That was.
I like the way that he becomes Jigsaw here because they made it such a personal touch.
Yeah.
Because they're really setting it up in the show. They keep talking about how pretty Billy Russo is. He's got the pretty face. Pretty.
Yeah, he's very pretty.
They keep pointing that out. They just keep setting up that they're going to fuck his face up by the end of this show.
Now more they're going to say it in a funny, maniacal way.
Yeah.
Now when people say, nice face, pretty boy, now he's going to pop someone in the head when they say it.
It was a great choice not to kill him off. Because a lot of the people Frank just offs right away, and so I thought like, okay, Frank's gonna kill him off. And then I was thinking, oh, that's kind of a bummer that we didn't get a chance to see Billy Russo embody the Jigsaw role. And his reasoning for not killing him off was pure Punisher style too. He punishes him. He like that's brutal, scraping his face against the glass, tearing off his skin. That was cringy. That was very cringy. It's called the Punisher, and you got more than just him killing people. You got to have some scenes where he's punishing some motherfuckers. Like he is getting long-term punishment right then and there. Yeah, because Billy lives to keep himself pretty, you know? Curtis, I thought, was a great character too. He was that cool character, you know, he's got the peg leg and everything. He's that character who's really working on healing, but one thing the show does so well, the inner turmoil and the inner conflicts, is even though he's the one who's constantly encouraging these soldiers to open up and heal and move past, you can see that he hasn't fully done so either, and that he has a lot more work to do as well. And even touching on themes like that, like gun control. This show did something that I did not see coming, the discussions on gun control. This show does not take sides. It actually talks about why people need guns, and it talks about why people shouldn't have guns. It really capitalizes on both. I could really see why this show did not have an event at NYCC. Gun talk is so big and such a crucial element to this show, and the effect of violence as well. I wasn't expecting that to be such a strong topic, but I appreciate that the show doesn't make you go, guns are bad or guns are good. They just kind of like both debates out on the table.
It's not black and white. There's a gray area in between.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Curtis, I'm excited to see what they'll do with him for season 2, because I know he's one of Punisher's main guys. He's one of the main people that should be part of like Punisher's team. What's neat about him is he's the one who probably has the good guy act up the best out of all of them. But if Frank needs his help, he'll be out in the field helping out, you know?
He's also a good one to have around if you're beaten half. All these guys, their PTSD, and then seeing that he's the calming guy in the group, like you said, really found myself surprisingly very invested in their relationship with each other. Like, I really appreciated their interactions. I thought they had very good chemistry together whenever he was on the screen.
I like the personal touch, too, of when, you know, Curtis is tied up and beaten up and has the bomb on him, how Frank reveals that Frank feels responsible for why Curtis has the leg.
That was a great scene. The dramatic and emotional human depth that you feel in that moment.
Because how Frank feels so guilty and Curtis is so
like
understanding.
It's not your fault. You're really understanding. You lost his leg.
Even in this situation right now, you are very understanding of what's going on.
He's the calm dude. And then just getting to Micro too. Again, I really appreciated where they started his story. And if you know the comics, obviously you know what's going to happen with this character. But if you're just coming into the show not knowing too much, the way he's like surveilling Frank and how they start with him, like, is he good? Is he bad? Like, what's the deal with this guy? And then when you see like he was given the surveillance footage, and I believe it was Gunner. Is that right? Gunner's the one who sent it to him. By opening it, fucking screws up his life. So, and I appreciate where they took his story and where it paid off, because I mean, this man has had to sacrifice everything for a whole year, be on the run, and make his family think that they were dead. So I appreciated what this actor did with seeing what goes on inside of a man who is watching his family, feels like he's right there, but is actually dead and feels that way too, because that could mentally get to a person, like being alive and being so close to your family, but having them believe you're dead and you can't do anything about it, because you could jeopardize them. And I thought they handled it in a very mature way, and I appreciate those moments. It just got me that much more invested in the character and what he has to go through.
Their relationship is kind of the center of this show. Every other one of the themes derives from these two characters, Punisher and Micro. And when they start off, they kind of just need each other. They're kind of using each other. They form a very strong connective bond, a very strong tissue. That scene when Micro goes to save Punisher, and he's like, my friend's dying and stuff, you can see, I believe that. I'm like, Micro really cares about this guy, actually.
Would he be there, too?
They've grown together. Micro got his family back because of Frank. Micro gives a huge shit about Frank. By the end of it, Frank doesn't get all mushy with him, but you can see Frank really cares about Micro too. Also, in terms of making Micro an essential element for these missions, I love the way that they built that up. Because there was a time where it just seems like, does Micro need to be out in the field? Does Micro need to be there? There's that one episode specifically when they go to see Gunner. It's like, how are they going to get out of the situation? They're in the woods and these special
with the drone.
ops.
That was
and then Micro uses the drone. He's helping them out. And I'm like,
so cool.
Boom, Micro's essential.
That was amazing.
That was brilliant.
And the brutality when he gets shot in the arm and then they take out the whole team. Like, it is so violent, this show. Like,
the violent sequences are great.
I got the John Wick like kind of vibe when I was watching these action sequences. So
I think my favorite action sequence would have to be the one where the special ops people first invade Micro's hideout, and then Frank's like, I'm gonna wait for them. You know, that was cool. That's like pure Punisher style. Like, yeah, let them come. I'm just gonna wait here. I'm gonna kill all of them. Why do I have to go running away? Oh man, this show really knows its character well.
And I also appreciate the moment when Billy was talking to one of the soldiers, and right after he died, like Frank called him back, and when he heard nothing, he's like, Frank. It makes them more intelligent, these characters, and I appreciate little moments like that. He knows when no one's talking to him and breathe, and just all he can hear his breath. He's like, oh, I know that's Frank's. I love it when characters can go into, like, mentally go into different places when they're being beaten and they can laugh about it. Like, it makes the characters more interesting because they're taking some brutal punishment, like watching the blood squirt on him. You could tell why this guy won. Like, when Frank freaking punched his eye out, I remember when we were watching, we were like, oh shit, just punched his eye out. Like, that was, because, I mean, you can understand why Frank would do that, but seeing that that actor appreciated his facial expressions and emotions, I felt like this is for my eye. Like, I fucking hate this guy so much. Like,
he gets to an explosive emotional point because he's kind of just cool and calm the whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
But then he gets to a point where he's just lost it. That scene though, when Billy decides to use the pliers to cut off Frank's whatever those are called. Yeah. Things that he's handcuffed with. That was really well done because they were setting up that Billy's probably going to kill him.
That's what
they were setting it up. That's an interesting scene to analyze because it makes me wonder, was Billy giving Frank an opportunity to live or giving Frank an opportunity to get his revenge? Or was Billy just using Frank for that moment because he knows that Rollins will hate to get killed by Frank?
To answer your question, I really, again, just from watching it only one time, I think that he had realized from the way that Rollins was interacting with him, like, this fool's gonna could give me up, or has probably already given me up at any point. The way he's talking, like, he doesn't give a shit at all about me, even though he's not a man of honor. He did make a promise to his brother that he would not, he'd be the one to kill him. So there was those two factors going into that, and again, when you treat over the top like a piece of shit to a character, they're getting in moments like that. The turn makes sense. Like, it's actually, you buy that motivation.
It was emotionally motivated. That entire thing. It was not just plot heavy-handed. It was emotionally motivated, and that's what made it so powerful. Frank crushing his eyeball.
Oh man, it gave me some Michael Myers tremors. Like doing like felt like I was watching. Oh, and like he even got the bad eye too. Like, oh my god. And then watching Billy like just maniacally stare at it like he was enjoying it. Like, what I enjoyed about that scene was also Frank. Again, when I talked about earlier about him being very methodical, he just knows that's his brother. That's like his best friend. He knows like what pushes Billy's buttons, and like he's kind of manipulating him psychologically, where he's just like telling him things, you know, make him like, again, promise to kill him only, and like he's just putting all these things in his head that, again, where you get to the emotional payoff and that moment that's earned, it's like, it wasn't just an emotional payoff. Like, Frank put in his head like what needed to be heard on top of the bad guy giving him that emotional moment where that's earned. So that's where I appreciated like John Bernthal's Frank Castle. He's not just gonna punish and kill you. Like, he's methodical, he's intelligent, like he can get psychologically in your head, like where he gets with Lewis or in this case. And also, I appreciate it.
Also depends on who he's killing. Sometimes it's just a guy with a gun who's trying to shoot him, so just kill him.
Yeah.
But then if it's like a personal death, he makes it a personal death. That's where this show is able to draw a fine line between murderer, vigilante killer, because
anti-hero.
Because if he was just punishing everyone left and right, like actually punishing them, they're like, oh. But he only punishes select few in this whole show. This was great. This was a really well human-told show that really pays honor to veterans in a strange way. Makes, you know, veterans cool at the same time you could really understand their trauma. I mean, I can't fully grasp their trauma, but it gives you a deep insight into it, and I appreciate that Marvel made a show that took time out to tell such a human tale. It was more impactful than I expected to be emotionally. I was just showing up to watch a cool show about a guy killing a bunch of people. I was not expecting this. Yeah, it was a nice surprise. It's a really human story. I don't know if you made it to the end of this video. It's a long ass video. Hopefully you stayed till the end. You can subscribe to The Real Rejects, click that notification bell. Andrew is on the Movie Source channel on YouTube. Keep a lookout for his Easter eggs and references video all on The Punisher. Become a Patreon eject today. I have a lot of fun perks over there. Take care, people.